Click by Unbox.
Welcome back, everybody, to another Deep Dives. And today we're going deep on the personal finance classic, Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki.
Yeah, it's been a while since I read that one.
It's one of those books you can revisit. I find myself going back to it every few years and finding something new.
Definitely always something to learn.
So for those who haven't read it or need a refresher, Kiyosaki's book is all about the financial lessons he picked up from two very different father figures.
His own dad, who he calls Poor Dad, and his friend's father, the Rich Dad.
Two dads, two totally different outlooks on money. Now, Poor Dad, he's got a PhD, believes in the traditional path, good education, stable job.
Working for a paycheck.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that a house is your most valuable asset. But Rich Dad, he's a self-made entrepreneur and didn't even finish high school.
He's all about financial literacy, having your money work for you. This is where it gets interesting. He sees a house as a liability.
A liability. Isn't that kind of a controversial take? I mean, most people see their home as an investment.
Right, it's the conventional wisdom. But Rich Dad focuses on cash flow. A house comes with a lot of expenses, mortgage payments, property taxes, repairs, you name it.
So you're constantly putting money into it.
Exactly. It's not necessarily generating income unless you're renting it out or something like that.
Okay, so that's a pretty fundamental difference in how they view assets. So this kid, Kiyosaki's right in the middle, soaking up these contrasting philosophies.
Yeah.
Did it affect his view on work?
Oh, absolutely. One of the most powerful lessons from Rich Dad is work to learn, not for money.
I love that.
He argues that most people, the poor and middle class, are stuck in the rat race, working for a paycheck just to make ends meet.
Living paycheck to paycheck, yeah.
Exactly. While the rich focus on building assets that generate income.
So instead of trading your time for money, you build something that makes money for you.
Right, and to illustrate this, there's a story about Kiyosaki actually working for Rich Dad as a kid, for like 10 cents an hour.
10 cents. What kind of business was this?
Well, it wasn't about the money. It was about the lessons Rich Dad was teaching him about assets, liabilities, and the whole idea of the rat race.
So it was like an apprenticeship of sorts.
Yeah, you could say that Rich Dad was showing him the ropes, helping him understand the fundamentals of finance.
Okay, so instead of grinding away at a job, what does Rich Dad suggest people do?
He talks about this concept of minding your own business, which doesn't always mean starting a company.
So what does it mean?
It's about building your asset column, things that generate income for you. He uses the example of Ray Kroc, the guy behind McDonald's.
Everyone thinks of him as a fast food mogul, right?
Exactly, but Kroc himself said his real business was real estate, the land under those McDonald's restaurants.
So it's not always about what's on the surface.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing the underlying assets.
Exactly, and those assets can take many forms.
So besides real estate, what other kinds of assets are we talking about?
Well, Kiyosaki mentions starting or investing in businesses. There are paper assets, stocks, bonds, that kind of thing. The key is these assets should be working for you, generating income passively.
Passive income, that's the dream.
Right, and it ties back to that idea of escaping the rat race. You're not trading your time for money anymore. Your assets are doing the work for you.
Now, this whole concept of the rich invent money, it sounds a bit far-fetched, doesn't it? Like some kind of financial alchemy?
Haha, yeah, it's not magic. But it does require financial intelligence, creative thinking, and recognizing opportunities that others might miss.
Can you give me an example of that?
Kiyosaki uses the story of Alexander Graham Bell and the telephone. Bell originally offered his patent to Western Union for $100,000 and they turned him down.
Wow, they must have really regretted that one.
Yeah, talk about a missed opportunity. It shows how fear and lack of vision can sometimes prevent people from seeing the potential in something new.
It's easy to judge in hindsight, right?
Exactly, but it's a good reminder to be open to new ideas and not let fear hold us back from taking risks.
Okay, so you see an opportunity, but there can be internal roadblocks too, right? I'm talking about fear, doubt, those things that hold us back even when we know we should take action.
Absolutely. Kiyosaki talks about 5 main obstacles to financial success: fear, cynicism, laziness, bad habits, and arrogance.
And we'll dive into those in more detail later.
Yeah.
But what's fascinating to me is that so much of this comes down to mindset. It's not just about learning financial strategies. It's about shifting your perspective on money and how you approach it.
Yeah, it's about changing your relationship with money. And that can be the key to unlocking your financial potential.
So as we move into the next part of our deep dive, I want you to think about your own beliefs about money. Are any of those 5 obstacles holding you back? We'll explore how to overcome them and start building a brighter financial future in just a bit.
So we've talked about mindset, but how do we actually start putting these principles into action? Let's get tactical and explore some of Kiyosaki's advice.
Yeah, let's get into the nuts and bolts.
Right.
So where do we begin?
One of the first things he emphasizes is finding a mentor, someone who's already achieved the kind of financial success you're aiming for.
Someone who's been there, done that.
Yeah.
Got it. Why is that so important?
A mentor can provide guidance based on their own experience. They've navigated the financial world, made mistakes, learned from them.
So that they can help you avoid those same pitfalls.
Exactly. They can offer insights you might not get from just reading books or articles.
Okay, so you've got your mentor. What's the next step?
Kiyosaki's big on this idea of paying yourself first. And he doesn't mean treating yourself to a shopping spree.
No, definitely not retail therapy.
It's about setting aside a portion of your income for savings and investments before you pay any other expenses.
Prioritizing your future self.
Right. Even when you've got bills piling up and temptations everywhere.
It's like building that financial foundation brick by brick.
Exactly. And it's not just about saving, it's about putting that money to work for you through investments.
Investments.
Yeah,
That's where things can get a bit intimidating for some people.
it can be. But that's where continuous learning comes in. Kiyosaki talks about mastering a formula and then learning a new one.
What does he mean by that? Like a financial formula?
It's about being adaptable. The financial landscape is constantly changing. So what worked a few years ago might not be the best strategy today.
So you got to stay ahead of the curve.
Right, and that means being a lifelong learner, always seeking out new information, new strategies.
But it's like having a toolbox.
Yeah.
You need different tools for different jobs.
Exactly. And the more tools you have in your financial arsenal, the better equipped you'll be to handle any situation.
Kiyosaki also brings up this idea of being an Indian giver.
Yeah, that one's a little controversial.
It does sound a bit strange.
Yeah.
What's he getting at there?
He's not advocating for taking advantage of people. It's about understanding the principle of reciprocity.
Giving and receiving.
Right. It's about looking for opportunities to add value and receive something valuable in return.
So win-win situations.
Yeah. Exactly. And this can apply to all areas of life, not just finance.
Now, he also talks about choosing heroes in the financial world. Why is that important?
It's about modeling. When you admire someone who's achieved what you want, it plants a seed of belief that it's possible for you to.
It's like having a blueprint for success.
You study their habits, their decisions, their mindset, and you start to internalize those patterns.
So it's not about idolizing them. It's about learning from their journey.
Exactly. And those heroes were once beginners, too. They faced challenges, made mistakes, but they learned and grew along the way.
It's inspiring to remember that.
Speaking of challenges, let's revisit those 5 obstacles to financial success that Kiyosaki talks about. We touched on them earlier, but I think it's worth exploring them a bit deeper.
Yeah, let's unpack those a bit, starting with fear. It's a big one, right?
Oh, absolutely. Fear of losing money, fear of making the wrong decision, fear of the unknown. It can be paralyzing.
And it can prevent us from taking those necessary risks to grow our wealth.
Right. Then there's cynicism, that voice that whispers, "It's too good to be true," or "It'll never work for me."
The Chicken Littles of the world.
Exactly. Always focusing on the negative. And their cynicism can be contagious. It can drain your enthusiasm and make it tough to stay motivated.
And then there's laziness, which I think speaks for itself.
Procrastination, lack of discipline, choosing instant gratification over long-term goals. These are all forms of financial laziness.
Okay, so what about bad habits? What are some common examples of those?
Overspending is a big one. Impulse purchases, relying on credit cards, not tracking your spending. These are all habits that can sabotage your financial progress.
Yeah, this can be really hard to break.
They are, but it's not impossible. It takes conscious effort and a willingness to change your behavior.
And finally, we have arrogance. What does that look like in the context of personal finance?
Arrogance is refusing to acknowledge what you don't know. It's dismissing your ideas because you think you have all the answers. And that can be incredibly dangerous, especially in a field like finance that's constantly evolving.
So it's a combination of overconfidence and a resistance to learning.
Exactly. And that can prevent you from seeing opportunities and adapting to new information.
So how do we combat these obstacles? Any tips?
Well, I think we've already touched on some of them. Finding a mentor, educating yourself, developing good financial habits.
And most importantly, being aware of these obstacles in the first place.
Absolutely. Once you recognize them, you can start to take steps to overcome them.
Now, I'm curious, have you personally struggled with any of these obstacles in your own financial journey?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Early in my career, I struggled with fear big time. I was so afraid of making a mistake that I held myself back from taking risks.
What helped you overcome that fear?
It was a combination of things. Finding a mentor who encouraged me to step outside my comfort zone, educating myself more about finance and investing, and honestly, just taking action. The more I learned and the more I did, the less fearful I became.
So knowledge and experience are key.
Absolutely. And Kiyosaki also talks about the importance of teaching and sharing your knowledge with others. Why do you think that is?
Well, for one, when you teach something, you solidify your own understanding of it.
Right. And you also create valuable connections and potentially open yourself up to new opportunities. It's a beautiful cycle of giving and receiving.
So it's not just about personal gain. It's about contributing to a larger community of learners.
Exactly.
We've covered a lot of ground here. Finding a mentor, mastering formulas, paying yourself first, overcoming those 5 obstacles, sharing your knowledge. It can feel a little overwhelming.
It can be a lot to digest. But remember, you don't have to do everything at once. Start with one small step and then build from there.
Progress over perfection.
Exactly. It's a
Um,
journey, not a race.
And that's the beauty of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. It's not about becoming a millionaire overnight. It's about changing your mindset, developing those good habits, and taking consistent action towards your financial goals.
It's about creating a life of freedom and opportunity, a life where you're not limited by financial constraints.
So as we move into the final part of our deep dive, I want you to think about what's resonated most with you today. What's one thing you can start doing differently to move closer to your financial goals? One of the things that really stuck with me from Rich Dad, Poor Dad was how Kiyosaki uses stories to make his points.
Yeah, those stories really bring those financial principles to life.
It's not just theory, it's seeing how these ideas play out in real-life situations.
Like that story about Kiyosaki and his friend Mike starting a business as kids, collecting those old toothpaste tubes.
Oh, yeah. They were going to melt them down and make something new, right? Didn't quite work out as planned.
Not exactly, but that wasn't the point. Rich Dad was using that experience to teach them about entrepreneurial thinking.
Seeing opportunities where others don't.
Right. It's about looking at things differently, being creative, taking action.
And that story where Kiyosaki gets frustrated working for Rich Dad for just 10 cents an hour.
Oh, yeah, that's a powerful one.
Rich Dad really lays it out for him there, the difference between working for money and having money work for you.
Yeah. It's about breaking free from that cycle of trading your time for money.
And building something that generates income even when you're not actively working.
Exactly. Passive income. That's the key.
One story that really made me think was the one about the basketball player who went from making millions to being broke.
Yeah, that one's a cautionary tale about what can happen when you have money, but lack financial intelligence.
You can earn a lot, but if you don't know how to manage it, you can lose it just as quickly.
It highlights the importance of financial literacy.
No matter how much money you make, you need to know how to make it work for you.
Absolutely.
These stories are so powerful because they're relatable. They show that these financial challenges are something we all face.
It's not just about rich dads and poor dads. It's about everyday people trying to make smart financial decisions.
And that's what makes Rich Dad, Poor Dad so inspiring. It shows that financial freedom is achievable for anyone.
Regardless of your background or income level.
It's about mindset, education, and consistent action.
And I think that's a great takeaway from our deep dive into Rich Dad, Poor Dad. It's about empowering yourself to take control of your finances and build a life of abundance and opportunity. So what will yours be?